companies. Number 8, the value of total energy inputs.
Why is gold worth some 20 bucks an ounce?
I don't know, because it's scarce.
1,000 men say go searching for gold. After 6 months, one of them's lucky. 1 out of the 1,000. His find represents not only his own labor, but that of 999 others to boot. That's 6,000 months or 500 years, scrabbling over mountains, going hungry and thirsty. An ounce of gold, mister, is worth what it is because of the human labor that went into the finding and the getting of it.
Now think about how much energy, labor, ingenuity, and time that goes into finding that silver and refining it.
The mining company produces silver bars, the composition of which is 93 to 97% pure silver. It sells the bars to a refinery, which further purifies them for sale to industries. The action begins down in the mine, where geologists point a night-on gun at various spots in the rock face. The device detects the levels of 40 different elements, including silver. Silver in its natural state isn't silver-colored at all. It's charcoal gray. Those silver-looking deposits are actually zinc and lead. Miners drill holes in the silver-rich areas the geologists pinpointed, then insert sticks of dynamite. After the blast, carts haul the chunks of rock, called ore, to the surface. Geologists then test ore piles and blend them as required to achieve a consistent amount of silver content per kilogram of ore. The ore first goes into the primary crusher. The machine's huge steel teeth break up the big chunks into smaller pieces. Those pieces then drop through grates below into the secondary crusher, which breaks them down into even smaller pieces. Those go into vibrating cone crushers, which pulverize them into tiny pieces. A conveyor transports the crushed ore to the ball mill. At this point, the ore pieces are roughly 6 millimeters big. As the mill's large cylinder rotates, steel balls bounce around inside, grinding the ore into powder. A water circulation system flushes the silver-rich powder out of the cylinder and into large tanks which keep the water moving. To separate and dissolve the metals the powder contains, workers pour in acid. 72 hours later, the rock waste now settled at the bottom, the solution containing dissolved silver is pumped through filter presses. The filter plates are treated with a zinc-based chemical which attracts silver molecules. As the solution passes through, the plates trap particles containing silver, forming a layer of black powder called silver precipitate. This precipitate is composed of approximately 50% silver and 50% waste, the waste being a jumble of various metals, dirt, and other impurities. To separate the silver from the waste, they first dry the precipitate in a gas furnace for a couple of hours. In the mining company's lab, technicians continuously test ore samples to determine the grade, the term for the quantity of silver per kilogram of ore. They heat the samples to 1093 degrees Celsius for about an hour to burn off the impurities. What's left after the burn-off are the silver and other metals, such as lead, zinc, copper, selenium, and cadmium. Lab technicians then treat the samples with a chemical that prevents silver from burning off, and put them back in the oven. When the samples come out about an hour later, all the other metals have burnt off and only silver is left. They weigh the silver and compare it to the weight of the original sample in order to calculate the grade. The key to running a profitable mine is to ensure that the grade is consistently within certain parameters. Back at the mill, workers put the now dried silver precipitate into an oven, along with chemicals which prevent silver from burning off. Approximately 4 hours later, the silver and waste have separated and melted. Workers pour them into bar-shaped molds. The silver, being heavier, settles at the bottom. Workers skim off the waste floating on top. In less than 5 minutes, the molten silver cools and hardens, enabling workers to extract what is now a silver bar. The mining company sells the bars to a refinery for processing into industrial-grade silver.
It's crazy to think that all those tons of earth were moved just to find 1 ounce of silver, and right now we can buy it all for less than a dinner for 4 at our local sports bar. Number 7. Silver has no counterparty risk. Silver has another awesome quality. It has alloidial title to it. If you hold it, you own it. Almost every asset you own is controlled by somebody else. If you own your house outright, you still have to pay property tax, which means you really don't own it. Your cars, computers, TVs, and clothes are rendered less valuable with each registration, taxation, new fashion, or planned obsolescence. Even your stocks are not really yours because the actual certificates are being held by the nefarious DTCC. Who knows if they're selling stock that maybe they don't have? Have you ever heard of naked short selling? Silver is without counterparty risk. You do not have to rely upon somebody else fulfilling a promise for your asset to have value. All paper assets have counterparty risk. They use interest rates to value the risk that you might not get your money back. This will become very important as our society collapses and promises are broken by all. When the collapse accelerates, people will do the unspeakable thing as they become more and more desperate. People whom you have relied upon for years will suddenly break faith. This will not only happen on an individual level, but also on a corporate and governmental level. Pensions will be cut, benefits terminated, interest payments not paid. And this is where things get really scary. At this point, we will either see a deflationary crash or hyperinflationary depression. It will be a deflationary crash if there's not enough money to pay the increasing debt and interest. But I believe the elite will pay all the obligations to keep their game going.
Do you still believe that we should maintain the fundamental principles of Social Security as it did in 83?
I think we should maintain the principles of Social Security, but I think the existing structure is not working, and that until we can construct a system which creates the savings that are required to build the real assets so that the retirees have real goods and services, we don't have a system that's working. We have one that basically moves cash around, and we can guarantee cash benefits as far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power. And this is why the issue ultimately has got to be resolved in terms of, do we have the material goods and services that people will need to consume, not whether or not we pass some hurdle with respect to how legal financing occurs, because the financing is a secondary issue, and it's the means to create the real wealth, not an end in itself.
This will get every promise paid with toilet paper currency. Number 6. Silver is below the inflation-adjusted high. We all know that $50 in 2012 does not buy you anywhere near what it did in 1980. If we factor that record 1980 price of $50 in silver using the government's rigged inflation numbers, that means we would have a real inflation-adjusted high of silver at $130. That would mean that we're still 75% below the real inflation-adjusted high of silver back in 1980. If we use that same inflation calculator for gold, we would see the real high for gold is $2,300. This means that we're still 25% below that record in real terms. I believe the real high of silver and gold is much, much higher than that for many reasons. First, the government is lying to you about the real rate of inflation. A recent CNBC article shows that the government is lying to you even today about the real rate of inflation. They do this so they can steal from you, plain and simple. Every dollar that they print is a direct tax against your wages and savings. They need to keep your expectations low so that you will not panic while they are gutting you. The government hides this inflation of the currency through 4 major tricks. Number 1 is hedonic adjustments. If a car goes up in price, say from $20,000 to $21,000, it would, on the face of it, show a 5% increase in the price. The government does not want that, so it creates an adjustment which takes into account the value of the options added. They arbitrarily create a dollar figure of value of, say, a better standard radio, better tires, lumbar support, upgraded cloth seats, and a dual exhaust. The government can say that added $1,500 worth of value to that car. So when calculating for inflation, the price of the car went down 2.5% to $19,500. It does not matter if you don't want, need, or even value those options. The price goes up for you and down for the government. A trick corporations use is to say a 12-ounce can of soda is $1, and through smaller cans they are now 10 ounces and still charge you $1. You lose 17% of your soda, which costs more per ounce. The government says it's still a can of soda and it's the same price, so no inflation. Presto. The second trick they use is substitution. If inflation cannot be tamed through hedonics, they simply substitute a product in the basket with a less expensive product. Say the original basket of goods had filet mignon in it, and it went up from $9 to $10 a pound. They can simply substitute it with porterhouse steak at, say, $6 a pound, and actually say that inflation went down to eat meat. They can then substitute that with ground beef, chicken, pork, or even dog food. The very fact that people would substitute a higher product for a lesser one because of cost is clear evidence of inflation, and yet they use it to understate it. If housing remains too expensive, they use rental rates. Remember, it's all about containing your expectations. The third trick they use is weighting. When that does not work, the government changes the weighting of a hotter category with a lesser one. For example, healthcare and education are notorious for rising costs. They make up 20% of the economy, and for the CPI, the government might only weigh it as 15%, lessening the effect of the overall number. Or they might weigh certain regions of the country more than others. Or they might weigh discretionary consumables that are known to be falling in price, that we buy infrequently, and that are not vital to the necessities that we need and buy every day. The fourth trick is, when all else fails, they just don't count it at all. Left out of all these real inflation equations for the government are the most essential parts of our lives: food, energy, and taxes. I don't know about you, but these three things are the things that I care about most in my budget. In addition to these internal tools, the government can export inflation by sending money overseas so it never hits our economy. Also, if money can be pushed into stocks, it does not enter the real economy, and that also benefits the elite, especially when there is an orchestrated fleecing of the public through crashes. So there were the four tricks that the government uses to lower our expectations on inflation. They use hedonic adjustments, substitution, weighting, and subtraction. This allows the government to post benign inflation of 2.4%, when the real rate is easily over 10%. So if the real rate of inflation is 4 times higher than the official CPI number of silver and gold, that would put the real high of silver at $528 and gold at $9,220. This is a much more realistic number because the money supply in the United States has been vastly increased since 1980. Using the broad component of M2, there is approximately 10 times the amount of money in the economy. So if silver was at close to $50 in 1980 times, 10 times more dollars in circulation would mean that silver is close to $500, and gold should be close to $8,500. With those numbers in mind, we are still miles away of hitting any real record in gold and silver. And this is just one factor in the price of silver. When you realize that there is a lot less silver in the world since 1980, $500 is too low. When you realize that there are 50% more people in the world since 1980, $500 silver is too low. When you realize that only about 15% of the world's population even had the opportunity to participate in the bull run of the 70s and 80s, $500 silver is too low. When you realize that there are a lot more dollars, euros, yen, yuan, and other currencies of the world since 1980, $500 silver is too low. When you realize that we are going to have a mathematically inevitable collapse of all fiat currencies, all paper assets like stocks, bonds, and real estate, silver is actually priceless. Number 5. Silver's history as money. Throughout history, silver has been used as money in more times in more places than gold. To function as money, a monetary item should possess a number of features. It needs to be a medium of exchange. It should have the liquidity and be easily tradable. It should be easily transportable. Precious metals have a high value to weight ratio, and it should be durable. To be a unit of account, it should be divisible into small units without destroying its value. Precious metals can be coined from bars or melted down into bars again with a low percentage cost. It should be fungible, that is, one unit or one piece is equivalent to another unit, which is why diamonds and works of art and real estate are not suitable as money. It must have a specific weight or measure or size to be certifiably accountable. The third feature is that it needs to be a store of value. It should be long-lasting, durable, and it must not be perishable or subject to decay. It should have a stable value. It should be difficult to counterfeit, and the genuine must be easily recognizable. Today's silver is not used as money since it does not circulate, but it still provides a crucial role as a store of value.